we can be a part of God's chosen elect, and churches often refer to people as being part of God's chosen elect. And the point is that if we're ever to think of ourselves as that, or to think of anyone else as that, it cannot be done without the knowledge that to be elected is to serve. It's not to be privileged. And if you go home with nothing tonight, or just one thing, go home with that in terms of the way that we interpret parts of Revelation, but also many other parts of the Bible, where you can look at the start of Colossians and stuff like that, and being God's chosen people or God's elected people. It means the same thing. We're chosen to serve and to not be privileged, if that makes sense. And so all this Jesus with swords in his mouth, riding around on big fat horses, and kind of with a big sense of bloodshed, it's not what it means on the surface. That in itself is an interpretation of Jesus riding into Jerusalem and the word of God bringing the world to its knees and winning the day, and God ruling over all. And so, should we be scared? Yes and no. Revelation 22 verse 6 says, "The angel said to me, those words are trustworthy and true. The Lord, the God who inspires the prophets, sent his angel to show his servants the things that they must soon take place." The Lord is with us, and he is guiding us to what Revelation describes as the new heaven and new earth, and being there with him and walking through life with him together. But what we have to be doing in response is thinking, are we standing in the right place? Are we standing with the last, the least, and the lost? And if we're not, it's a scary and worrying thought if we're not. And it's up to us to not be the exclusivists that we're made out to be by the rest of the world in being a Christian and being part of a church. So, this isn't necessarily a think, pair, share, but for 30 seconds, take a moment and think, and you don't have to share it because it might be horrible or what have you, but think of something in your past that you've been maybe called by another person that has hit you down here and hurt, but actually deep down you've known to maybe be true. Have a think about that for just 30 seconds. And, okay, for the church, it can be being called exclusivist. It can be being called hypocrites, and being one thing on the inside and then another thing on the outside to the rest of the world. And so it's uncomfortable, and it itches and scratches and gets at you whenever you're called it by someone. And in that vein, I want to tell you about another storm, as it were. And this storm they're called Year 9 Set 5. And this storm batters me every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoon. And having only just started teaching, I'm learning to appreciate that I think every teacher has this class that, in the politest possible way that you can describe them, are insane. A lot of them. And picture the scene, okay? It's Monday afternoon, lunchtime's over, I'm sitting at my desk, just kind of finishing off some marking, bell's gone, and then I realise, great, I know who's coming. And if you kind of imagine the scene, it's kind of nice, silent, I can hear the birds kind of tweeting outside, and then you've kind of got this sort of thud, thud, thud. And if you imagine the scene at Jurassic Park where kind of the T-Rex comes and the water kind of in your cup, starts to shake, and shake some more, and the cup starts to shake. And so you're kind of bracing yourself, you're holding onto the desk and thinking, here they come. And then bam, through the door, high as kites and kind of ready to pop like helium balloons and just off the wall. And so you sit there and then kind of you sort of get up and sort of work to sort of settle them down and kind of just start to get them down to do their work. And then you go, oh no, the sort of 3 or 4 main protagonists of the class haven't arrived yet. And you're sitting there going, please, Lord, let them be somewhere else. Let them be indisposed behind the bike sheds. Let them just not be on their way here. And then, door opens. In walks the first 2. And these are the twins. These are Katie and Tegan. They're non-identical twins, but they look so ridiculously similar that the only distinguishable difference between them is their height. One of them's like this, and one of them's like this, and it gives them kind of an uncanny equivalence to Dr. Evil and Mini-Me. And so, in they come. Oh, great, here they are. Then, in comes Kathleen. She's kind of like bad girl of the class, got the swagger on, kind of, sup, sir, you're right. And kind of, it's like, kind of, you kind of get this whiff of a smell that you know isn't supposed to be smelt in a school context, if you know what I mean. You kind of go, right, wonder what she's been doing at lunchtime. And then, finally, in comes Liam. And Liam's the rude boy. He's like the bad boy. He's got the swagger, he's got the gear, he's kind of one of these ones that kind of walks around like this and kind of like, yeah, and he's got a temper. He's got a temper, he has. And so many people get on the wrong side of him. And it's to the extent that kind of even if he came in and sat down at the wrong side of the table, he'd probably have a fight with the table because he's on the wrong side of it. And so you wonder how this lesson's going to go, and it goes with Liam looking for a fight. He's looking for a fight with someone, anyone, to get under their skin and kind of to scratch away at them. And so it just so happens that today it's the twins. And so he sits at his desk, being all badass and rude boy. He sort of turns around and stares at them menacingly. The girls are over here. They see him staring. They swear back. He swears back at them. They swear back at him. And so it escalates and some more until they sort of charge out of the class, effing and blinding and going, I can't work with that little in the room. And you're going, oh, great. So get them back at the end of the lesson and sit them down and kind of, this is just sort of the first few weeks into teaching. And so I still don't know what I'm doing and haven't got a clue how to tell a kid off. So I'm kind of going, right, I'll approach this lightly at the start and kind of work up to an absolute kind of telling off for walking out of my lesson, because it's not what you do, and that's it isn't what happens in my room. And I'm just about to kind of open my mouth, and they're sat at the desk after the lesson, and then the first thing, I can't even get a word out. It's like, sorry, sir, we didn't mean to walk out of your lesson. Really like science. You're like the only teacher that doesn't chuck us out of your class. And I'm like, because these girls don't apologize, apparently, to anyone. And I'm sitting there going, okay, not what I expected. And so we kind of get down and we kind of sort of have a conversation about what happened and how they felt, and kind of they're really mature about it and kind of say how they were feeling. And I kind of dismiss them at the end of it. And off they go. And I'm left with this sense of how restless and uncomfortable they felt in the room, having to deal with Liam being his usual wonderful self. And how uncomfortable and how it itched at them, and how their effing and blinding and storming out was actually their way of dealing with it and doing something about it. And fair play to them for that. And it's not often in my 8 weeks of teaching that I say this, or